What's up, YouTube? Welcome back for another ILLUMINATE stratagem tier list video. This is going to be for tier 10, and this is after the attack of Super Earth. We are going to be taking into account the new Flesh Mob, Stingray, the Crescent Overseer, and the new Leviathan enemy. Although, I will get into it a little bit later, but I'm not going to prioritize stratagems that can kill that enemy particularly as much as other ones. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into it. All right. Before we start, though, just do be aware that this is an opinion piece on a tier list, okay? I'm trying to objectively look at stratagems the best I can, but obviously it has some inherent bias as far as like how I use the stratagem and the fact that when I'm doing this tier list, I try to isolate all the stratagems from one another. Like, because I understand that you can take a stalwart and bring 5 of these other things and make the stalwart very good, but it's very hard to convey in a tier list constantly because I have to take into account all these different variables constantly with every single stratagem, and then it might be slightly better for this enemy or it's slightly better for that enemy or better for this objective or that objective. It basically just gets muddy really fast, so it's easier when I isolate the particular stratagem, and then you can take that information and then amplify it in the direction that maybe it's lacking. So for Stalwart, for instance, it might be like lower than you might expect it to be, but because you can bring thermites for anti-tank where it fails to kind of be able to do that, or, you know, bring a medium pen primary or secondary to take up the slack of the Stalwart's lack of that, you know, you can start amplifying that stratagem, right? But I can't always take account for that because you might not bring that in your loadout, which will kind of make the Stalwart not as good. Right? So let's get into it. First, starting with the Orbital Precision. This is a stratagem that has been basically kind of falling down the tier list slowly over time. I still think it's like absolutely solid, like A- pick, very consistent, and it does what you expect it to do, but it's not very good against the Illuminate forces altogether. Like, it's not particularly great against the Harvesters unless you get a direct impact. And even still, you got to make sure their shield's down. They're a small target. Their legs are quite explosive immune to basically fully explosive immune. So it doesn't always work out very well for you. It's fairly okay against the Leviathan, but we'll get into that now. The Leviathan is an enemy that you don't always need to kill. They're quite annoying from time to time, especially when you have like 5 of them. But unless you're playing on a lower difficulty where you need to actually kill it for the objective, on tier 10, this is that tier list, you don't always have to kill them. You can just largely ignore them or just hide behind buildings, snake through the alleyways and stuff like that, and they can't really touch you all that much. Occasionally, you're going to be doing a defense mission, and that is where the discussion for like the Leviathans will mostly come in, but because they can actually truly affect, you know, those generators in the back. But for the most part, on all the objectives that we currently have, they're not very important to kill, so I won't be weighting those particular stratagems as high. Let's keep that in mind. But it is a fairly good way to kill them. Gatling Barrage, it's okay. Largely, it doesn't always have that stopping power that you really want it to. Especially on the city maps, you know, a lot of repositioning has to happen for it to be fairly good, but it does provide like a pretty good short cooldown effect on a lot of the Illuminate forces. It's not particularly good against the Harvesters. It's not particularly good against the elevated Overseers, but it does do pretty good against like voteless. Some will straggle and manage to get through, and then like the Overseers that are melee, they'll get through. And it does do fairly good against the Leviathans, but you just need to do some like quick trigonometry to make sure that, you know, it's actually going to land on the Leviathan. So that being said, fairly good stratagem. It's almost an A-, but I feel like it's been losing some luster as we've gotten better and better like primary, secondaries, and so on and so forth, because it really deals with those enemies more or less. So not enjoying it as much as I previously did. It feels like it's being power crept a bit. Orbital Airburst has also been falling down. It's similar reasons for the Gatling Barrage, but it doesn't have as much of the stopping power the Gatling Barrage has. The Gatling Barrage has a lot of like the heavy pen and so on and so forth associated with it, so it can actually do a fair bit of damage to like heavier, tankier enemies, although the Illuminate don't really have that many. Orbital Airburst is pretty good, but I find that it's also losing some luster because the ships are farther apart from the center of the map than they used to be. Now that they kind of rotate around the edge of the map, the airburst is coming at such an extreme angle that it's actually spreading out the munitions a ton, and there's leaving a lot of gaps in between for enemies to just kind of like straggle through or kill you by accident. So yeah, we've had some like pretty crazy instances where like the angle is so extreme for the orbital airburst that like basically it's missing the target completely and sometimes killing or not killing enemies in the middle of nowhere, right? Like it's I don't know. I feel like orbitals in general, I forgot to kind of mention this, have felt a little bit worse. Some are affected more than others by this greater degree of the ship traveling. And maybe it would just be better if the ships were more centralized to the map rather than being so far out. Because it can be really awkward if your ship is on the opposite side of the map and that angle is just so extreme. It might require 30 seconds of repositioning and maybe, or, it might still be at such an extreme angle. So yeah, a little bit unfortunate on that one. I do really think that Napalm Barrage is absolutely S tier. Previously, I didn't put this one as high, but with the fire changes, it is insanely good for just throwing at an Illuminate drop and just walking away. So many enemies will die to it or just be severely weakened, similar to like the Harvesters even. They'll be walking through the flames, almost killing themselves sometimes if they have to walk through the vast majority of it, because fire damage is now affecting the surface area of the enemy, so it'll scale higher if it's a larger enemy. And the Watchers, or not the Watchers, sorry, the Tripod Harvesters die very easily to fire now. The new nade in particular does a lot of damage to them, and fire in general. Flesh Mobs, very weak to them. Overseer is very weak to them. Vola is very weak to them. So basically the only thing that this thing will not kill is typically it won't kill the elevated Overseers if they're flying too high. And then obviously the Leviathans. But I still think that it's good in so many situations here that it's just amazing. And it's not affected by the angle as much as the other stratagems I find, because the surface area that it covers, it overlaps so much that like those holes that might be there aren't really existent. 120 millimeter barrage, fantastic for just taking out they're not fabricators, but the ships. Fantastic for just dealing with like and weakening a lot of the ground troops. It will feel somewhat inconsistent at times just because of the angles, things we were talking about, but also Harvesters, very explosive immune. So you'll need something else to deal with those guys more often than not, but very, very solid pick for just general use. And the 1 minute shorter cooldown than 380 can be very useful. And I find the range, the radius of it is just big enough for a lot of the Illuminate facilities. Walking Barrage, solid. You can throw it on Illuminate missions at a distant, drop or a distant group of ships, and it will just walk its way through fairly consistently. Not always the best versus everything, but when you see a large group of Illuminate coming towards you, you can just kind of depend on it to some extent to deal with quite a few of the enemies, which is nice. 380, much like the other ones, I do prefer the 120 on the Illuminate missions, but the 380 is very strong as well for just dealing with the following missions. Like I was saying, the 380, you have to get a little more up close and personal, because obviously it's not like the Walking Barrage. It won't walk towards the target, so you got to get a little bit closer. But I do think that it is extremely powerful. Not quite as good without the fire, but very good at dealing with targets. In the cities, especially versus Leviathans, I do find that these three can take out Leviathans pretty damn good, assuming the Leviathan kind of helps you and your ship doesn't have to reposition and they like fly out. So you can throw a 380 underneath the Leviathan, especially if you've gotten the angle correctly and you notice like where the shells are actually going to intersect with the Leviathan. You know, I think it's around 380 shells to take out a Leviathan. I think it's closer to like 5 to 6 for 120s. So yeah, fairly effective. Orbital Rail Cannon, I'm going to put in like B+. You're only really going to be using this against a Harvester. Make sure to take out the shield first, and it does one-shot them. And you might try to use it for a Leviathan, but because of the tracking issues of flying targets, the Rail Cannon will often aim at the ground below the central point of the Harvester, but it will not hit the, sorry, not Harvester, the Leviathan, but it won't hit the Leviathan a lot of time. You can do some finagling where you can like throw it off the target and try to get that intersection, but it's very difficult to do, and it's a pretty damn long cooldown if you fuck it up. So you're only really going to be using this thing versus Harvesters, and even then, I feel like there's typically like better stratagems to lean on for those situations. Laser, solid A-. I'd love to put it higher, but the 3 uses really does hurt this stratagem unless you're like being very fast with your team and your average mission time is like 20 minutes or something like that. You just so often feel like you're just running out of uses, and you're at like the end of the mission or near the end of the mission. You're just like, man, I wish I had 1 or 2 more uses. I still am like hoping that they reconsider about the uses and either up it or just remove the uses entirely and just increase the cooldown maybe slightly to compensate. Like, I would like to use this throughout a mission. You know, I love it as an oh shit button, but it feels so limiting by only having 3, and so many stratagems around it feel so powerful that it's hard for me to justify always bringing it. But it's great for like a blitz mission or like the new repel missions, very much like using it on those 2 particular missions. It's great for like you see 5 ships next to each other, throw this in the middle or like on one side and they'll just kind of trace along all 3 or 4. It's great for that. Fire, it's like throw and forget, you know? So still absolutely solid option though. Okay, EMS, it's like D tier, honestly. It's a short cooldown, and it does stun a fair bit of stuff, but I feel like in most situations, you might as well just use the next thing on our list, which is Orbital Gas. I think it's like a solid A+. At the moment, it's just very good at dealing with the crowd control, dealing a lot of damage, short cooldown, can deal with the ships, because remember, if the projectile of the gas intersects with the like ground ship, it'll blow it up. So you can easily use this as like an additional thermite or something along those lines, while also having a short cooldown, like CC damage effect for like the hordes of zombies that are coming at you. So very effective. Highly recommend checking it out. Orbital Smoke, right down D tier, honestly. Orbital Smoke causes too many gaps, far too often in tier 10, especially we're doing this mostly around 4-player co-op. If the enemies are mad at you, smoke doesn't really help you at that point. They're always going to run to the last known location that they saw you. So if you throw down smoke, they're going to try and run through the smoke to get to you first because they know kind of where you last were. If you have great distance on them, smoke can be pretty useful. Or if you're just trying to do stealth in general, if you're going off by yourself, it's okay. But I think Eagle Smoke is the better option overall. 500 kg. I've definitely been seeing a lot less people using the 500 kg versus the Illuminate now that we have so many other like better ad clear weapons, and the 500 kg doesn't really show much prowess on the Harvesters because they're so explosive immune. It is good against flesh mobs. Flesh mobs absolutely get eviscerated by this. Unfortunately, you get 2 uses. You could use it versus Leviathan, not particularly great versus it, especially since you have to do like the trigonometry like I was talking about before. So I'm gonna probably put it somewhere in like A+, A-. It's like very close. It's like a solid A, but I feel like just because I only have 2 uses and I'm only really using it versus like the occasional like ad clear, I feel like sometimes I'd rather just bring something else that's actually has more uses and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna kind of skip the order here, and I'm gonna talk about Cluster because I think largely I would rather bring Cluster than 500 kg to Illuminate, because Cluster I think is slept on a little bit. Very good against flesh mobs, very good against overseers, very good against voteless. As long as you get the trajectory right, similar to the 500 kg, you know, it's a long horizontal like rectangle, and you have 5 uses. You can really just keep spamming it as reinforcements come in for the Illuminate. Strong option. Just be careful in the cities because of the new mechanics. The Eagles will try to reposition if, let's say, there's like a building in the way. And sometimes that reposition might be on top of you. So for the most part, try to make sure that you're throwing it down a street that has like enough room for it to come through, right? So be aware of that. Or, you know, when you're in the city parks, you know, I mean, there's lots of open space. If you're on a normal Illuminate mission, no problems at all. Eagle cluster works very well. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on this one, or they're kind of using something different, which also is a lot easier at times to use. Strafing Run. I nearly want to put Strafing Run in S tier. I'm so damn close to it, but I feel like it doesn't quite have everything that I want it to do. And a lot of times enemies are still kind of surviving from time to time to it. Like, especially flesh mobs. Flesh mobs more or less just kind of shrug this off. So I do really like bringing Strafing Run, and it's very easy to use, and it's like has a lot of utility. Now that the Illuminate dropships on the ground have health bars, you can throw 2 of these and kill one. Like, I do really like using the Strafing Run, and it works really well in the city urban maps because you don't have to think as hard because it's going to come mostly behind you. Honorable mention to killing Leviathans. If you are very good at positioning it like at its tail as it's flying towards you, like if you throw it on the far side, you can get a nice Strafing Run across the top. Theoretically, you could get a 1 tap with that, which is pretty cool. Typically more closer to 2, but that being said, that tactic is not a reliable one, and it's pretty hard to do, especially when the Leviathan is probably going to be shooting at you and ragdolling you and so on and so forth. So, yeah, really like the Strafing Run, but it's almost there. It's just, it's not very good against the Harvesters. It has trouble with the flesh mobs, and I do find a decent amount of times that, like, you know, Overseers especially will like just kind of shrug it off and just keep running at you, and you probably have to use multiple uses. Where with Cluster, I find I prefer it against some enemies, but it's a little harder to use. It's kind of like 6 half dozen the other, right? Cluster's hard to use, Strafing Run's easier to use, Strafing Run's not as effective, but yeah. 110s are pretty useless on Illuminate overall. I don't particularly like using them. You're probably gonna at least have to use like 2 against a Harvester at least, including removing the shield for it beforehand probably. Flesh mobs, I don't recommend using it. They're too small of a target. The tracking on it for the Leviathans is like very like weak, and similar to the other stratagems, like they'll typically aim below because of the tracking issue. They don't really do airborne targets very well. So yeah, not a huge fan of it on this front. I do think it is getting better on the other fronts because they recently changed a little bit to get better armor pen on creator angles, but yeah, I do think it still needs a lot of work on Illuminate if that's where they're trying to go with it. Solid contender, as always, is the airstrike. Kind of hard to just argue against it. It's just, it is what it is. Solid A-, A+. I think I'm going to put a little bit higher than 500 kg just because you get multiple. You get 1 more of it. Just a solid all-arounder. Like, it's hard to say anything positive or negative. It just works, right? It's a workhorse kind of eagle. You know, just make sure that it is going to come in at a horizontal direction. You know, you make sure that buildings are not in the way, or, you know, if you're in a wide open area, you give it time, because sometimes the flesh mobs are pretty fast. So you got to like get them while they're not aggroed or something along those lines. So you have enough call-in time. But, you know, if this lands on a flesh mob, it's killing it. The explosive damage is very strong, and it is fairly good at killing like objectives and like ships on the ground and stuff. So it's solid. All right. This one, bit of controversial, but I think Eagle Napalm has gotten a hell of a lot better versus Illuminate. And it's for the reasons I said earlier. Fire is insanely good now, and I highly recommend it. Eagle Napalm at times just feels like a better Eagle airstrike because you get the damage on the explosions, then you get the fire afterwards for all the ad clear. So you get a lot of upfront damage from the explosions of the napalm going off, and you get a lot of fire damage over time. And it's dealing with basically everything on the Illuminate front other than like the airborne overseers, right? So yeah, very strong. Highly recommend giving it a try. Once again, city maps, a little hard to use eagles at times, but I think on the average Illuminate map, it works really well. It's awesome. Very good. And you get, you know, quite a few uses of it. And with the upgrades, you get good damage. It's good. Highly recommend. All right. Eagle Smoke. I'm going to put it somewhere in B-. This one's a tough one for me to put just because I'm not really a stealth player. You know, it is rather effective at like being stealth, and it is definitely the best coverage of smoke that we have at the moment. But you'll have to be a very particular type of player to utilize this. So just like throwing it into your loadout in a tier 10 typically won't really help your team all that much. It might even hurt them because you're like blocking off that line of sight for your team, but they might still be shooting through it or running through it. So you're giving them cover, not you. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, now into the sport weapons. MG43, still a fantastic option all around for the Illuminate. It does lose some of its power that it previously had versus Illuminate previously just because of like flesh mobs. Flesh mobs are very tanky to just straight up ballistic damage. They're weak to mostly explosive or just like high DPS shrapnel. So MG43 is not as strong as it once was, but it's still absolutely an S tier pick. Very reliable at dealing with like harvesters, overseers, breaking shields, dealing with flesh mobs. Like I said, you're using like 1/3 of a mag to like a little bit less or more, depending on like if you're supplementing it with something else. You typically can bring a guard dog very easily with it, and guard dogs are still very good. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and they have been fixed, by the way. So very strong overall. Highly recommend. Medium pen, great. All right, a little bit controversial. I know some people are going to be mad at me for this one. It's light pen. Light pen versus Illuminate sometimes isn't great, especially when we're looking at it individually. If all you do is bring a stalwart to a mission and you start shooting it at stuff, you'll quickly realize that like harvesters, killing a harvester with a stalwart is like insanely annoying because you have to shoot at their eye, which is very small, and they'll be bouncing around. It's not easy to do. There's always that one guy in my comments that's like, dude, it's so easy to kill a harvester with a stalwart, but it really isn't. It's really time consuming and it's annoying as hell, especially when there's 5 of them in front of you. If I have an MG43, I can quite easily kill at least 3 with 1 magazine. Stalwart, you're not being able to do that, right? With a stalwart, you have to bring a like stratagem, or you have to bring a primary weapon to deal with that harvester, right? MG43, you don't have that problem, right? You can actually just lean on the MG43 and leave your primary for something else, right? So, hey, HMG, I nearly want to put it in S tier, but the negatives of low ammo reserve and the fact that it has a lot of recoil and very low ergonomics make it so it's a little bit lower. You need to invest into the HMG to make it good, similar to the Stalwart. You're gonna have to bring a backpack, right? Spy backpack most likely, or just be very good at scavenging ammo. You're going to have to probably bring P Physique unless you're crazy and you somehow don't mind the bad ergonomics, but most people probably will want to invest in it, or get recoil reduction armor. Some people don't like crouching when shooting, so the recoil reduction armor is kind of important for those individuals. So HMG, overall, very solid pick. Highly recommend investing into it if you want to make it the best it can be, but solid pick even if without it. Just be careful of the ammo supply. All right, railgun, it's like B+, and I'm being a little bit generous to it here. If you have like very good aim and you're actually like good at shooting harvester arms like reliably in 2 shots, and like you're quite good at like sniping the head of overseers, I'm being generous here. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm being generous. It's not an easy weapon to use on Illuminate, and for the Leviathans, you're gonna need a teammate to open up like a wing or like the underbelly for you so you can actually do proper damage. If that does, if you have some team play, you could save them some recoillesses or some shots. It can help in that damage. AMR, I seem to see it a lot less than I used to when Illuminate first came out, but I still think it is an absolutely solid option. The handling on it, the ergonomics is still kind of bugged. We've diagnosed this. If you use someone else's AMR, you have better handling than your AMR. Very weird bug. Devs are aware of it. We told them. Also, the scope is like zoomed out now. Instead of it being closest to your head, it's like this. This like FOV is affecting the scope now. I've kind of asked them, hey, can you guys add that like Call of Duty setting where you can toggle between FOV affecting your scope or not affecting your scope? It's really annoying because some scopes are like, you know, they're perfect. Like they're right up against your eye. It feels like you have some good zoom. You can use the scope pretty effectively. And then some scopes, it's like, you're like stretching out the gun as far as possible away from your head. And you're like, I can't see the scope anymore. Right. And basically AMR is suffering from that. I would love to put it in S tier because of the problems I just stated and the fact that you're typically wanting to bring more ammo for it, or not everybody has like a crazy amount of aim with AMR. I feel like it's kind of dropped a little bit in terms of favorability. I'm still going to put an A+. I think you could easily argue for S, but yeah, not as impressed with the new scope changes. I'm hoping they add that feature to change the scopes to have FOV effect or not, but we'll see. A little bit of a glow up here for grenade launcher. Been absolutely loving using it versus flesh mobs. Good versus voteless already. Fairly effective versus, well, quite effective dealing with the ships on the ground. Obviously, it's still not really doing anything versus harvesters other than taking out their shields because they're quite explosive immune. And you're not going to be shooting at Leviathans, but solid option for just mobbing, right? Flesh mobs and voteless and the occasional, like, not the occasional, but for like any ground-based overseer, consistent 2-tap. Very good. For flesh mobs, you're looking at like closer to 5 GL shots, 4 or 5, but you can take out multiple at the same time. Just good. Highly recommend. You're probably going to want to invest in it, bring a supply backpack, unless you're a mad lad and you want to bring like a guard dog or something like that instead, but it's good. It's not like a necessarily bad option at all. Sterilizer, kind of an interesting pick, very team oriented in the sense that you're just like kind of like CC affecting everything around you. Gas is still a great option. I can't really, you know, dog on it too hard. You're mostly there for like just, you know, keeping enemies back from you. It's probably closer to like a B+, B-, like somewhere in the middle. You know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Honestly, looking at it now, I'd probably put like Railgun and Sterilizer closer to B- together. They're about the same kind of pick rate for me. They're fun to use at times, but they're not great picks, honestly. But they can be useful. Like Sterilizer does have that team play, so maybe it's a little bit higher, but we'll kind of keep it there for now. We might readjust. Flamethrower, honestly, A-. It's good. Risky to use, but honestly, solid contender. Flame weapon. Because it doesn't have much range, I can't feel very good about putting it higher. I do love the magazine size increase, but range is really a huge factor. And just lighting yourself on fire pretty consistently still. I do feel like it's a little harder to light yourself on fire. They did say that in the patch notes, but it's still very consistent at lighting yourself on fire when like enemies get too close or like you're diving backwards. And yeah. But if you're a mad lad, you can get up there close and personal with a harvester and kill it very quickly with it. It's good. Yeah, I don't think I have really anything else to say for that. It's a fun choice. Highly recommend, similar to the grenade launcher. Laser cannon, a little bit of a glow up on this one, not gonna lie. Almost want to put an S tier, but I still feel like it lacks a little bit of like TTK. It's a little slow. It's a little slow at times, but glow up for sure. The ammo economy is great, obviously because it's laser. Flesh mobs get lit on fire. It's not exactly a fast kill on a flesh mob, but it's a fairly consistent one, and you can like kind of light multiple flesh mobs on fire at the same time. Doesn't really have any CC, so that's definitely kind of a knock against it from being S tier. And because the TTK is quite slow, if you get a lot of flesh mobs on top of you, it's not going to feel great, like having to dive spam away from them and try to kill them slowly over time. Shields, it doesn't deal with shields very fast because the DPS is quite low on it. But if you have a good skilled hand, you can kill overseers quite quickly, which is why it's an A+, and it can deal with harvesters quite effectively. Just getting through the shields is a little annoying. Dealing with Leviathans, similar to the other the Pen 4 heavy pen weapons, you need a teammate to help you break open a fin or the underbelly, and you can do some serious, like some decent damage. And it does seem like you're getting fire procs on the Leviathan. You don't really see them go on fire, and I don't know how much total damage is doing, but when you do like aim at a weak point and stop firing for a bit, you do see the reticle continue to blink red, or not red, it's like gray in this situation, that they are taking damage. So maybe it's doing decent damage versus Leviathan. Hard to really tell. But yeah. Quasar, this is going to start going into like, I can't really recommend bringing AT all that much to Illuminate missions. Like, it's fairly good at if someone can break down a shield for you every like 15 seconds, you can take out a harvester, and it does eventually break open a bit on the Leviathan, but it's just not particularly fast at doing anything. It doesn't really one-shot anything than a harvester, but harvesters are so easily killed by other more versatile weapons. It's hard for me to justify putting a anti-tank weapon that's only really good against like 2 enemies on the entire front in a higher spot, right? That's why you normally don't see many people bringing AT other than just for Leviathan, and there's just better AT options, honestly. Arc Thrower, good overall. You know, hard. It's just like the other two. It has its positives and negatives. The tracking is sometimes a little off, but it did seem to get a little bit of a fire rate bump that was not in the patch notes, which is nice. Unfortunately, flesh mobs are like quite immune to stagger and stun when they get pissed off. Like, you'll hear them growl and roar and then start running at you. Essentially, when that happens, they're basically immune to being stunned. They can be gassed, which is where like Sterilizer is technically better, but like, yeah, it's a little awkward when you're like stun locking a flesh mob, and then all of a sudden they get pissed and they roar, and then they just run at you, and then you can't stun them anymore. So at that point, you might want to pair this with like gas grenades or something like that, or gas guard dog. But still, like, you're stunning a lot of things on this front, and it's fairly good. Doesn't seem to stun overseers as long. Maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments down below if you've noticed that as well. But yeah, solid still, solid. Commando, still actually like one of the better AT options on the Illuminate front. Like, if you want an AT weapon, like you really want to bring an AT weapon, I highly recommend bringing it for harvesters. It one taps harvester arms, so you can kill 4 harvesters as long as the shields aren't there. Fairly good for sniping objectives as long as you can take out the shields at a distance. And it's okay versus the Leviathan. Like, you can use, I think it's like 3 rockets to the back fins, because it's supposed to be 1 recoilless, and I'm pretty sure it should be like, the math works out that it should be 3 commandos to the back fin, you know, assuming you miss 1, that's okay, to crack it open, and then, you know, you and your team can shoot into that back fin area, you know, so you can kind of pair this with like another support weapon. So if you really want to just have an AT weapon in your arsenal alongside another support weapon, I'd say it's probably Commando. The only reason it's not an S tier, like with a lot of the other ones, bringing AT is not particularly important when you can just bring other support weapons to kind of get you over that line and have more versatility, right? Okay, the flag, a pretty controversial one. It's S tier, obviously, because it has massive aura. No. The flag is mostly ceremonial. It's for fun. It's for a joke, and it's just for melee. It does get some extra stagger, but it doesn't really apply on the Illumina front. It's just fun to have. Make your mission a little bit harder if you want it to be there. But unsurprisingly, it's down here. We'll see if they make any changes to it, similar to the gas guard dog situation. I would not be surprised that in a couple months we'll be redoing this tier list, and all of a sudden the flag will be higher. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. EATs, more of like an A-. I do think that EATs are still quite strong on the Illuminate front, a little more cumbersome when compared to the Commando, which is more efficient weapon, but still a very honorable mention. You know, works well for the most part. You know, 2 individual ones to the back fins on the Leviathan, 1 tapping harvesters in the leg. You get a second one in case you miss, but you're only taking down 2, you know, every minute or so, versus like taking out 4 potentially every 1 minute 30. So the Commando kind of wins an efficiency battle. Yeah. Big glow up here from the autocannon. Autocannon is disgusting now with flak. Put this thing on flak for the vast majority of the mission, and you will be slaying flesh mobs. You'll be taking out a lot of ground, and you can like 1 tap a lot of like ground units like from the Overseers and for the Vote list and the Crescent Overseers, you can snipe them. Just be careful. The consistency on the flak can sometimes be weird because it might airburst a little too early on an enemy dead body or just like other enemies getting in front. But, you know, it's 3-tapping flesh mobs if you can get like good placement, like center mass, maybe a little bit lower than their stomach. It's very good. And then for Harvesters, I highly recommend armor piercing setting on that, just so you can be more accurate. Flak doesn't always work super well against the Harvesters. It can either be like a really fast kills because you get really lucky with the shrapnel hitting correctly, or you can get really unlucky and you might unlock like 10 rounds and they're still walking around because the shrapnel didn't hit their leg properly. So armor piercing, high explosive works just more consistently in that situation. Versus Leviathan, it's Pen 4, put it on the armor piercing, shoot into already broken bit, and it does pretty well. Decent damage per second. Airburst, it's a fun one, and it might be a bit surprising to put it in B+. It's a fun one. If used correctly, it's definitely a high skill weapon, you know, learning the angles with the cluster rockets, and not blowing up you and your teammates constantly. But as far as like a deleting of flesh mobs, this thing is actually nuts. Put it in flak mode, you can just aim it at a flesh mob or like multiple flesh mobs and they just die. You gotta be careful, obviously, with it. There's a high chance of you killing you and your teammates a lot, especially if you use flak mode. That's where I recommend cluster a little bit more and like learning the angles at which you want to aim it into the sky so it rains down on the enemies. Obviously, it's not going to really do anything versus Leviathan or a Harvester, but versus flesh mobs, if you really hate those guys and you want something that's like actually quite strong against them, a little bit memey, a little bit out there, a little hipster, but pretty good. I don't think I'm really unjustified by putting it there. Spear is an awkward one to place because it's actually like a solid, like Leviathan killing weapon. Not the most ammo efficient because it needs 5 shots. You only get 4 with its spawn. You need to resupply. But everywhere else on the entire front, it sucks. It can't one-shot a flesh mob. Harvesters, good luck unless you get like a god angle and it hits the arm, which is unlikely. I can't recommend it necessarily. I'm gonna probably put it somewhere in B+ just because I don't really know where to put it. It's not a great weapon necessarily for Illuminate. I even think B+ is too high. I'm like putting there. I'm like, I don't know. I think B-. If all you're planning on doing is killing Leviathans and like you're not planning on playing with your team, I would use Spear. But like that being said, Recoilless is the better option if you're trying to actually kill Harvesters because you can aim them at the leg, and you're trying to kill Leviathans because you can actually like help out your team by like shooting a wing off or shooting the underbelly, and then they can help you shoot in. And if not, just 6 rockets, your total reserves. That's actually not bad. At least you don't have to resupply in order to kill Leviathan, right? Just 6 rockets. If you have a teammate that can grab the backpack, team reload, it's really fucking fast, right? So Recoils at least is higher just because it's more efficient and it actually can do something against a Harvester more reliably. Obviously, take down the shield first for that, but you know, fairly effective. If you are doing a defense mission, bringing this or anti-tank emplacement, solid results for taking out Harvesters that are going for your generators. So, yeah. Wasp. Bit of a tough one for me. I want to put it in S tier so bad, but I don't know if it necessarily deserves to be there because it's a little awkward at times, especially on city maps, because sometimes the tight, confined areas will cause your rocket to like smash into a wall, or like it can be a little frustrating at times that the elevated Overseers just zip around so much that the tracking will miss. It's not always the strongest versus a Harvester. The results may vary depending on the angle of attack that you're dealing with. Like I want to put an S tier so bad, but it has some weirdness to it, and it also requires a backpack. So, but the ease of use is there because it's a tracking, and as long as you're not like spam firing it at every individual Overseer and you're like doing one taps, it can feel very good at times. I'm gonna put it S- for now. We'll see if we move it at all, but like I highly recommend it. If you've kind of like not used it since it came out, give it a try. Like this thing deletes flesh mobs. It deletes Overseers as long as they're not too mobile. It's okay, sort of, versus tripods. And it could technically take down a Leviathan if someone cracks it open for you first. But yeah, give it a try. You might like it. You might love it. You might hate it. Who knows? Shield Generator, always a solid pick. I'm just going to put it somewhere in like A. Always a solid pick for just keeping you alive. You know, it can absorb a lot of recoil, like stagger and like ragdoll for you. Solid. Can't really say much more than that. You know, you don't need it, which is why it's not an S tier. It's very much something that, you know, if you're doing solo runs or going off by yourself, you don't want to die as often. It's a good option, but honestly, if I'm going to pick a better backpack, AR-23 Guard Dog, insanely good. Skipping the order, I'm sorry, but just have to mention it. It's so good. They have fixed it. It's actually reloading properly in your backpack now. I love using this thing on Illuminate missions. It's an absolute demon at tapping heads and destroying overseers. I use it in the repel mission and just run away, constantly running from dropship to dropship, and this thing is just aiming behind me, head tapping all the overseers trying to kill me. I'm getting tons of kills just because of this thing. I don't even turn around. This thing is just stopping them from like chasing me and shooting at me. It's great. Highly recommend. Shield Gen, this is a little bit more of a niche Shield Gen because it actually requires you to use like a one-handed weapon, but now the one-handed weapons are in a better spot. Pummeler and Knight and Defender are all in better spots. There's a lot of elevated overseers. You can absorb a lot of damage with them. So fairly decent option if you want to have a one-handed weapon, but it's more niche, which is why it's a little lower. And yeah, and you have to be aiming down sights for it to be active, which is another kind of, and it almost deserves to be in B- for that, but I'm going to be a little nice to it. Ballista Shield, if you're being a melee boy, it's okay, I guess. I can't really recommend it. It's kind of nice to have the turtle shield, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles backpack to just absorb damage for you. But I can't really recommend it. It's just more of a melee thing that you could block some damage while like, you know, doing some pokes. So you're maybe not trading health, but largely can't really recommend it for like general Illuminate use. Just kind of a fun weapon to use. General backpacks, I'm going to put both of them in like B+. Depending on the player, you will either love it or hate it. I think it's very middle of the road because it kind of depends on how you're playing and how you're utilizing it. You know, it's like if you're someone who's like lone wolfing and wanting to like get on high ground, or you want to just like use a dodge button with the normal jetpack, you know, it's good, right? It's just good, and you can make it feel amazing if you play well with it. But I can't always recommend it. It's more of a personal choice from the player's perspective. So don't hate me for not putting it higher. Just, you know, I think you'll understand, hopefully. Jetpacks are kind of hard for me to place because, like, you know, you can't just like put it high and then expect like a player to pick it up and like utilize it really well. It might be pretty useless in their hands. So, you know, player dependent. Absolute solid, you know, A+ supply backpack. Although there's a lot of supplies located around the map, it's just really nice to feel like a one-man army and save those supplies for your teammates or be able to supply your teammates. So you can feel like a total team support player, or you can feel like a one-man army. Your decision when using the supply backpack. Absolutely solid. Love using this thing. It's not quite an S tier just because, like I said, there are quite a few supplies located around the Illuminate, and I did previously put an S tier on Illuminate, and I kind of felt bad because it's like, you're right, there is a lot of ammo just sitting around, very easily accessible on Illuminate maps, so I went a little too far. But A+, I think is very fair for the supply backpack. Very solid. Hellbound backpack, it's great. It's great. Probably like A-, B+ kind of area. Just keep in mind that the kill counter at the bottom lies to you. It is not accurate. It doubles the amount of kills you get when it detonates. You're not actually getting 100+ kills. There weren't 100 enemies on screen. There's a bug with it. This happens with a couple different things. It's happened in the past with the guard dogs as well. But basically, hell bombs, if you blow them up, they usually double your kills. So if the biggest thing at the end of the day is just to like be the top killer on the team, I guess. Secret grenades also do this. There's like a couple TikToks and shorts out there of people getting like 200 kill streaks. There's not 200 enemies on screen. They're literally just throwing out a thing that just gets them bonus kills. But that aside from that, it is a good stratagem to use, as long as you're not dying constantly when using it, because you can evaporate your own like reinforcements pretty quickly if you're doing that. So just be aware of that. Try to place it and then run out, or where Democracy protects to like stop you from dying. Remember, if you dive before it goes off, the range in which you will die to it shrinks drastically. You can actually survive a hell bomb from like 30 meters away or so if you're prone. But if you're standing, you need to be much farther. So keep that in mind. But solid pick. Laser Guard Dog, absolute glow up with the laser changes here, because it now lights enemies on fire. I'm honestly going to put it in S tier. Little bit controversial, but this thing melts flesh mobs. If you hate flesh mobs, that's the Guard Dog to use. If you hate Overseers, AR-23 is the one to use. But it's not like the Laser Guard Dog is bad against the Overseers. It's just slower, right? It's not going to kill as many voteless per second, and it's not going to kill as many Overseers, but it has unlimited ammo. And it's fairly good against Overseers, especially if you're not already lighting them on fire. Both Guard Dogs, fantastic. They have their pros and cons, but yeah, both very strong on Illuminate. I highly recommend them for the repel missions, especially, or blitz missions, or just anytime you're like running and gunning. It's just so useful to not have to worry about the enemies behind you, because your Guard Dog is handling them for you. Yeah. Gas Guard Dog, I'm going to put in like A+. I don't love this one as much, just because I find the Gas Guard Dog doesn't get utilized as much, unless like it's mostly like for voteless and stuff like that. And I find voteless would be a lot less lethal than bugs typically. It's nice for flesh mobs getting too close to you, but I'd rather the flesh mob die than just be like dancing around in the corner. But I can easily see someone else putting in an S tier. I just rather the enemies die before they get to me, rather than when they do get to me, they get stunned. You know what I mean? It kind of depends on how you look at that kind of stratagem and what you want for you. So yeah, solid. Almost S tier, maybe S tier for you. We'll see. FRV, this one's kind of slipping. Leviathans bully it. They bully it real bad, because they can essentially just one-shot it. Same with MECHS. Like, if we just remove Leviathans from the equation and pretend they don't exist for like a quick second for MECHS and vehicles in general, like all of the MECHS and vehicles are like A tier, A-, A+. They're all very strong. But unfortunately, because Leviathans exist, they're all like around B+ at the moment, unfortunately. I would put the Emancipator closer to A- just because it has like a lot of stopping power. Like you can kill a lot of shit with this thing, but like a Leviathan sees you, you're going to get one tapped and then you're on a long cooldown. And because we don't have the DSS on Illuminate plants right now, it's pretty painful waiting for that, that cooldown. So I really hope that maybe they get more tanky to the Leviathan, or we are actually able to kill the cannons on it. Right now, the cannons are just damage soaks. The damage just disappears. Like if you shoot a recoil at that cannon, the damage just disappears. Do not aim at the cannons. The cannons are literally traps right now. But that being said, I feel like the Leviathan's doing too much vehicle damage at the moment. It's mostly just because of like it's explosive damage and it's like multi-hitting the hitbox essentially. Yeah, I really love them, and I if you come by stream, you'll still see me using the mech, but it's sometimes hard to use. You got to be very careful. You got to play scared. Galley Sentry, absolute solid contender for like, you know, probably like A- or so. Very good for like all the bottom tier enemies. It doesn't really do anything all that well versus the Harvesters, and obviously it's not going to do anything versus the Leviathan. Just be careful not to throw it behind your teammates and then like mow them down, but like solid. You know, it's probably like A+, A-, A-. I don't know where exactly to put it. We're just going to put it there for now. I do actually prefer the Machine Gun Sentry a little bit more, a little less team killing, slower, faster cooldown. So if you accidentally throw it, it's being a little more effective. And also you can play pretty aggressive with it. But, you know, it's kind of 6 half dozen the other. Like if you need high DPS, use Galling. If you want like, you know, more consistent damage over the course of your mission, just remember it goes off cooldown pretty fast. Sometimes I forget. The Machine Gun Sentry is very useful for those like little patrols and just like annihilating them. Fire Sentry, it's like B-. it's okay at times. Like maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on it, but like it just doesn't have enough range. It gets bullied really easily by like enemies. It doesn't have any stagger or pushback like the arc thrower does or Tesla tower does. So it's kind of hard for me to like justify like recommending it all that much. It's okay. It's okay. I needed to have some kind of stagger or like more damage per second or something. It's okay. Rocket Sentry, good, solid Sentry. I do recommend using it for like, you know, longer range battles, or you can protect it. Not particularly great against the hordes of enemies that you're going to be running at. Pretty damn good against the flesh mobs, so maybe it's a little higher, but you know, it does get swarmed very easily by Voteless if you're not protecting it. So you definitely need to protect it more so than most turrets, just because if a Voteless gets between, I think it's around like 10 meters away or so, it just stops firing. It like gets nervous or something, gets like range anxiety, and just doesn't shoot anymore. So you have to be constantly be like protecting it. But if you are protecting it, it's obviously a rocket sentry. It's very ammo efficient. It's very strong against harvesters, decent against the Leviathans. Yeah, so like what's, you know, it's not that bad. Autocannon Sentry, I probably would recommend a little bit more so than the Rocket Sentry, although it has less range. It's better versus like mobbing just because it has AoE damage, high DPS, and stagger versus the flesh mobs. So it's got that going for it, but solid nevertheless. EMS Sentry, it's okay. I feel like I'm seeing less and less people use it. It's mostly just defense map usage. Unfortunately, flesh mobs are getting underneath the map quite often right now, so they're shooting at those enemies. And gas is just so good that EMS Sentry is slowly going down my tier list as gas continues to just be more and more prevalent and finding better and better ways of using it. So yeah, I'm going to put it all the way down there. I think normal mortar is like B- C tier. I think the only time you use it is defense mission necessarily. And even then, be very careful that it's not team killing you. And definitely try to use that module on your ship to like make sure it's targeting things. It's fairly good against the flesh mobs, but due to its like slow and its inaccurateness, a lot of times flesh mobs are just moving so fast that they're going to miss versus it. So I'd say B- is pretty fair. Maybe they can speed up its target acquisition or just like the firing of it. But yeah, it's mostly just a team killer if you're not babysitting it or telling your teammates that, hey, careful, don't let a Voteless get near you. Mortar. Shield Gen, I can't necessarily, it's like, okay, I can't necessarily recommend it. It's like, there's some utility tied to it of like just holding position versus Illuminate and like being able to take some amount of damage, but it gets melted in this faction by like so many different things. Like, for the Stingrays, for the Leviathans, for the Harvesters, even just like regular Overseers, like elevated Overseers, they melt it. Although it has a short cooldown, I just feel like it just doesn't get used very much just because it dies so fast. People are constantly recommending to use it on defense missions, but it's like you basically have to sit at the back of the map and get ready for something to show up and like try and kill it. But even then, if you throw it down, doesn't last that long, and if you're not killing that thing, it's going to just melt it. So it's got a little bit of utility, but I can't really recommend you like use it too much. Grenade launcher wall, solid. It's not going to really deal with all that much on the higher end, but like it melts flesh mobs, it melts harvester or not harvesters, but overseers and Voteless. But you are very vulnerable. If you're not wearing a guard dog at the time, it's very easy for Voteless to just kind of walk up to you and deal with you. Obviously, a harvester can still snipe you on it. But if you position well, I do think you can like mop up with this thing. It's just you need to position very well for it to be effective. You will probably not see too many people use it outside of defense missions. And even then, they're probably going to bring the HMG emplacement instead because it's just usually typically the better option for a lot of things. HMG emplacement, I'm going to put it A-. It's great for sniping harvesters. It's pretty good, like 4 to 5 shots versus a flesh mob. And then it mops up Leviathans as long as they're not shooting at you because you're very vulnerable on it. I typically bring this thing on defense missions or like if I just feel like I need a force stratagem to delete a rogue Leviathan that's pissing us off while we're trying to do the objective, I bring this thing. Very consistent. It's like 10 to 15 shots versus Leviathan. Just careful. The reason why I say 10 to 15 is because like every time I've tested it, I keep forgetting to slow down my fire rate and I miss a couple shots. If you fire this thing at max fire rate, your shots will go lower than your reticle. They're not ghost shots. They're actually just going lower because the barrel is not resetting after the reload fast enough. You can shoot it faster than it resets. So just be careful, slow down just a tad, and then, yeah, it'll be more consistent. But yeah, good choice. Just, I wouldn't really recommend using it versus Voteless or Overseers. It feels very largely like inefficient versus those two enemies. But yeah. HMG emplacement, solid A+ S tier. I'm probably going to put it in S tier, not going to lie. It's just very good versus Voteless. It's fair. I'd say it's quite good against flesh mobs, even though they're like pretty resistant to it for the most part. It's very good at deleting harvesters, very good at overseers. And if you do like the recoilless strat where you like break a back fin, you can throw this thing down and about like, I'd say about half the ammunition of an HMG deletes the Leviathan, something like that. You can also delete the stomach and do the same thing. Yeah, solid. Like, it's just solid versus everything. Like, it's hard for me not to say that. It feels like the MG43 of emplacements. Like, it just kind of does everything, which is good, right? Obviously, it doesn't do explosive damage to take out, like, you know, a dropship on the ground, but at least you can take out the shield with it. And it has a fairly short cooldown, good ammunition, just good. Just good. I've been really liking the Tesla Tower on my Illumina missions, but struggling a little bit on where to place it. I feel like on your average Illumina mission, it's probably B+. It's a big hazard to your teammates. It can just get bullied to death if you don't protect it, like with gas mines or something like that. And it does get like sniped by like ranged enemies a fair bit. But if you place this in the correct spot or use it on a defense mission, I think it elevates it quite a bit. I love bringing this thing for the defense mission on Illuminates. Very good. Throw it in a good spot to protect it with gas mines. Great combo stratagem right there. But all by itself, it does struggle unless you place it very effectively. And your mileage may vary on like how good of positions you can find for it. You're not always going to be able to find that plateau of like high ground to be able to utilize it. But when it does, it feels like S tier when it really pops off. So, yeah. Anti-tank mines, B+. Some of the enemies are just not going to activate it. Because the anti-tank mines get flung so far, it has a big area of effect, which is nice, but I do notice a lot of flesh mobs just kind of walk through my entire minefield. I'm like, wait, what? Obviously, harvesters are very explosive immune on that one too. So honestly, I'm being a little bit too kind to it. It's probably closer to B- if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, it's probably closer to B- on that one. So it is interesting, and you can combo it with like throw down an anti-tank mine and then like throw a cluster on top of it and have big explosions. But once again, looking at it from like an isolated point of view, not particularly great. Not as many like heavy armored targets like there are on other difficulties. Gas mines, solid A+. Solid A+. Very effective overall. Not much team killing. Honestly, could easily be an S tier. And it might just be B. But the only problem with it is that like it's not always very immediate. And the amount of times I've seen like the canister come up, it's about to start like unloading all the mines, and then an enemy like crushes it, or a teammate throws a stratagem, or like, yeah. If you're trying to use it in like an aggressive standpoint, it just can't work. But from a defensive standpoint, or like you just saw like a bunch of enemies running at you, like very, very effective, right? Just, you're not going to use it in offensive. And I think that's the only reason I'm not going to put an S tier is because you can't use it really offensively all too often. You really have to be using it more of it with a defensive mindset, or else you might like not get much use out of it. Anti-personnel mines, solid. You know, good against flesh mobs, good against voteless, good against overseers. Not going to do anything for the harvesters, but like A-, probably like bottom of A-. And then I'd say the incendiary are better just because you're lighting things on fire. Fire is awesome right now, as I keep trying to explain to you guys. Honestly, might even be like A+, but same kind of thing as the gas is that you need to use it with more of a defensive mindset. in order to get a lot of usage out of it. Now let's go through it and see if there's anything that I feel that need to be like kind of reorientated. You know, now that we've kind of had everything placed, I still think that, you know, that's still there. I feel very fair about that. Honestly, I'm going to put gas a little higher because man, it feels good. You know, we got stalwart. Yep. Happy with all that. We're going to put like HMG a little bit lower just because I feel like the investment is a lot higher than the other two. But it still feels quite good. Feeling good about all of that. Recoils is still there. Feeling good about all this stuff. I think we have kind of placed it correctly. I'm probably going to put the Patriot Exosuit a little bit lower on the B+, just because, you know, it does run out of ammo quite quickly, and destroying the dropships, it's not its strong suit just because you don't have much anti-person or anti-tank. I feel like I'm being a little bit unfair to the Rocket Sentry. Nah. It's just, it really gets fucked over by one voteless guy, and it just does not always feel good about that. Still B+ on the Gatling Sentry. Not always the most consistent, but I'm going to put it higher in the B+ because I think it deserves it. A little bit higher on Orbital Airburst. And then that a little bit higher as well. Yeah, I'm feeling good about this. I think we've placed everything pretty correctly. Just, you know, keep in mind that anything here can easily go up or down depending on how effective you are, how accurate you are, how you play. You know, so like this is just my opinion and how I've kind of perceived the latest patch and how I see people playing and how effective my teammates are when they use these things, not just myself. And just in terms of doing a tier 10 4-player co-op mission, right? And trying to keep in account that like you don't have to kill a Leviathan, or someone freaks out at me and says that the recoil should be way higher because it's really good at killing Leviathan. Leviathans are like a very optional side of Illumina missions. You could just ignore them. You really could. And I do it very often. You don't have to kill them, but sometimes you want to, and that's where I will put it, because sometimes these stratagems are not good against, you know, the rest of the Illumina forces. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. We'll be back for an Illuminate, like primary weapon, secondary weapon, and grenade tier list a little bit later. But you got to give me a little bit more time on that one, just because I need to feel out a lot of the attachment system, because I need to take the attachment system into account for that tier list. And it's like very difficult because it's hard for me to level up all the weapons if I'm not like cheating and spawning an XP, right? Especially if you're doing Illumina missions, you know the XP is kind of low, and I've been doing a lot of Illuminate lately. So yeah, give me a little more time to figure out and feel out all the weapon attachments and how they affect the weapons. But that will be coming next. Hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. Consider leaving a like down below if you enjoyed this. Enjoy the video, and leave a comment down below. What are you guys using? What's your S tier, right? What are you guys putting at the top of your tier list? Really curious to know how accurate I got with mine. Let me know. Come by the streams, check out the Discord link down below. We got a lot of other videos on the channel. Much love, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Peace.